Chapter 24. If you do this, you will damage yourself even further. Even though you want to use little chakra, the risks you're facing are too great. I know that. But we both know that his power is too great for me to hold back. Very well, if you think that it's necessary, then so be it. But you also could dash. A massive surge of power made him open his yellow eyes. The power came from no one else but Reinhard, the red-headed knight. Even nature itself seemed to vibrate with the knight while he was battling his foe. It was an ancient power, similar to Kaguya in nature, but very much a mystery to him. Feel that? Kurama asked, his voice serious. The fox could feel the strange power the knight radiated. It was alarming how in tune the very world around his aura seemed to just fuse with it. His power is incredible compared to everyone else in this world. I'm pretty sure I can defeat him in Bija mode, but something's off. Naruto said in his mindscape. The mere act of thinking such a thing left a bad taste in his mouth. I don't think he's showing the true extent of his power. That's a problem for us. Matatabi said in a calm voice. I'm pretty sure you plan to uphold your promise to Sadella, but if you do that, there's a pretty good chance Reinhard will try to interfere. His strange power and connection to the world around him will be a wild card in your fight. I know that. Naruto? A quiet female voice called out for him. The voice was sweet and pleasant. He lifted his eyes and saw Emilia in a wedding dress hovering above him. His head was in her lap and her fingers were combing his long, wild hair. He couldn't help but smile when he saw her confused face. What would she think of him if she knew what was going on in his head? Best not to know, he supposed. Are you awake? Emilia asked with a small smile, waiting for her boyfriend's answer. She noticed his eyes were sun-colored. Your eyes? Did something happen? Nothing, it's just... Emilia. How strong is Reinhard? He lacked a vast amount of knowledge of this world and its recent history, and since the majority of Beatrice's memories were her reading books, he had to guess about a lot of things. Oh wow. I'm surprised you asked me that. You felt it, didn't you? She asked as he nodded to her hopefully. I felt it, too. That's his true power. Naruto's eyes changed back to normal. So, he's the most powerful man in this world. I'm impressed. He said with a sigh. He hoped he had fought in the past with a lot more power, but it seemed that his true power would remain a mystery. Well, he would deal with the knight when the time came. For now, he had more information to analyze. Ever since Super Gramps got him the sun mark, he has been seeing strange visions when he used chakra or, more importantly, when he used his sins. He had been given the power in a time of war and an emergency, so he didn't blame the old sage for not explaining in detail his new abilities, but, through trial and error, he managed to glean a fraction of what it could do. When he used his abilities, knowledge that he hadn't learned through his own or Beatrice came to his head. Explaining it was difficult, but, in essence, he could feel the energies that he had and fundamentally understand them. He noticed a lot of things between mana and chakra, but primarily mana was less potent than chakra, but at the same time, it was easier and safer to use and mold it. His vague understanding of chakra and mana applied to his sins too. This got him to the important thing: the people that Emeralda turned into dragons were suffering when he was the new user of the sin of lust. He could feel what she did to them and, while it may be a bit of a stretch, he felt like he could bring them back just by letting his power take charge. Even though it could result in a very bad thing, he felt like he was responsible for their suffering and he couldn't just stay there while his new student and innocent people suffered. He sighed and finally got up from Emilia's lap, his decision already made. He then grabbed Emilia's hand and lifted her to her feet. The two went to the town hall, where the dragons were being examined. Frederica and Garfield were some of the few people he recognized. He walked toward them, intent on fixing his student's father first. Hello, Naruto, Emilia-sama. Frederica said when she noticed both of them. Hey, Cap. Garfield said softly. It was clear that the situation still affected him. Hey there. Naruto said as he patted his hand on the blonde boy's shoulder and walked past him. One of the volunteers that were checking on Garek tried to intervene, only to be met with the ice glare of an impatient Garfield. He touched the man's now dragon snout and closed his eyes. Focus on my chakra. Focus on the authority. His arm covered itself in a light purple hue. He remained in the same position for about 2 minutes before something began to happen. The purple on his arm began to change into a bright yellow, and before anyone could react, the low light transformed into an imitation of the sun, forcing them to look away from it. When they opened their eyes, the dragon was now glowing yellow and was slowly shrinking. Before they could react, Naruto himself began to glow and dozens of hands shot from his back to the rest of the transformed civilians. The rest of the dragons all began to shine once the hands touched their heads. Garfield, look! Frederica pointed at Garek's form when the dragon began to morph. A snout slowly turned to a face, claws, and fangs transformed into teeth and fingers, his gigantic body shrank to human size. The man was transforming back. All around them, people were gasping when similar things began to happen to every dragon, their original forms slowly turning back. Frederica watched all around her to see the spectacle and was amazed, but she soon remembered the one responsible for the ruckus and looked for him. Naruto was in the middle of it, he was sweating profusely and his eyes glowed yellowly. It wasn't long till he just collapsed on the floor, wheezing. Emilia was already at his side helping him to stand up. The naked silhouette of Garek almost hit the floor, but Garfield caught him before the man could suffer even further. He was taken from his arms by a medic, who began to analyze him. Cap. How? Garfield was speechless, the thing that affected him so much disappeared just like that, he didn't know how to feel. He had been thinking of ways to deliver the news to his mother and how she would react, but now it seemed like he had been thinking nothing but nonsense. Don't worry about that. You should stay with him, Naruto said. He was massaging his temples and barely standing with Emilia's help, his face was pale. Why yeah? He said while looking at him weirdly as he stayed there with his stepfather. It took a bit of convincing on his part for Emilia to finally stop checking him for anything bad, but once she did he stumbled a little before inhaling deeply and regaining his balance. How did you do that? Emilia asked as she started to walk with Naruto outside of the town hall. To be honest, I don't know. I just, sort of let my power take charge, it was almost natural. Naruto said with a chuckle. Oh. I see. The moment I think someone is coming, it finally ends up being Naruto and Emilia. The girl's familiar voice made them look at a pile of rubble. When he looked up, Beatrice was at the top of the rubble looking at the two of them as she walked down holding the hem of her fluffy dress. She went down to Naruto's side, who opened his eyes in surprise, and looked at him from top to bottom to check the condition he was in. You don't seem to be injured, I'm relieved, Kashira. If you'd been hurt while Betty was absent, I wouldn't have been able to leave you alone even to go to the bathroom. Beatrice said. I'm not a child who needs this much care. You know I can handle myself. Naruto was surprised by Beatrice, who had crossed her short arms and held her head high with an aloof expression of composure on her face. Her flippant attitude was the same as always. After you gave me your chakra, I was able to get up and walk freely. I was worried you have gone bananas, she said as she started to point her finger at her contractor. If it wasn't for Betty's devotion, your leg wouldn't be there. Your thanks, your appreciation, and your hugs aren't going to be enough, Kashira. Thank you. And I'm sorry. Naruto gently stroked the furious Beatrice's head the way he always did. Beatrice puffed her cheeks in dissatisfaction, but even so, she took a step closer to him, quietly enjoying his caresses. And, following this interaction between contractor and spirit, Rem gently butted in. The three of them turned to the blue-haired maid, who was surprised to see Emilia. She grabbed the half-elf's hand, feeling happy to see her. When Rem looked at him, she felt her heart fill with relief. She was really worried about his well-being, and seeing him with not even a scratch allowed her some peace. He just smiled at her, and she couldn't help but leap into his arms. Rem? Naruto asked, watching the blue-haired maid as she snuggled her face into his chest. I'm okay. Hearing his gentle and warm voice, Rem nodded and smiled at him. While she was happy to see him, she couldn't forget that he was in a relationship, so she let go of him and just limited herself to smile. When she saw his eyes, she didn't feel the same warmth she always felt, she felt strange. I know Naruto-kun is okay. But... she thought as her fists tightened when she saw him take Emilia's hand. She decided to forget what she felt, for her sake. Shortly after his reunion with Beatrice and Rem, he saw two familiar swordsmen walking their way. He was surprised when he saw Reinhard helping his injured grandfather walk. When he saw the poor state the old man was in, he ran to help him, but Wilhelm denied his help. He was carrying something wrapped in black clothing. Is that? Yes, it's my wife. Immediately after she died, her body turned into a pile of ashes. It would have been too wretched to leave her exposed to the wind this way, even though it's shameful that I put her in my jacket. Even if she's mere ashes, I want to place her in a grave and mourn her. Naruto didn't know what to say to Wilhelm, so he just nodded his head. However, he still had an interest in the redhead's absence. Reinhard, how did you know Wilhelm was in trouble? Turns out Reinhard arrived in the nick of time to eliminate his grandmother and explained that while he knew there was a request for help, his father, Heinkel, took Felt as his hostage. Shortly after knocking out his father and rescuing Felt, she ordered him to help everyone else, so he wasn't just doing anything but help others. Heinkel was now in prison, with Felt watching over him. There was no need to apologize again, my grandson. Wilhelm spoke softly to Reinhard. His voice was soft and warm. You did what you had to. I would have died if you didn't show up. But... He tried to protest, but his grandfather shook his head. Please, let me finish. Do not forget what I said to you. Teresa's will isn't dead yet. Her will is inside us. He said as he pointed at Reinhard's heart. Her will is right there. Naruto smiled when he noticed that their bonds had grown, not only as a family but as fellow warriors, too. Emilia-sama. I'm so glad that you have returned safely. Are you hurt? He asked, his attention now on the royal candidate. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, but are you alright? I can heal you. Emilia said worriedly, getting closer to him and already using her magic, but stopped when Wilhelm shook his head. I'll be fine, Emilia-sama. I thank you for your worries. Ferris will heal my wounds. Wilhelm said, looking at Naruto and Emilia. It's nice to see you again. They both walked away, but before he could get too far, something in her made him look her way. Her face was slightly red and she's holding Naruto's hand. Looking at her clothes, he had to wonder where did the wedding dress come from. Emilia-sama. Wilhelm called her name as the half-elf turned around and walked toward him. Did something happen before Naruto saved you? I noticed you're wearing a wedding dress. He felt strange asking such a question, but maybe the blood loss just removed a little bit of his common sense. The Sin Archbishop of Greed tried to marry me, but I rejected him. If I were to marry, it would have to be, well, him. Emilia looked back at Naruto playing with Beatrice, her face turned red, however when she realized she said that out loud for Wilhelm and Reinhard to hear. Wilhelm chuckled softly at Emilia's expression, it reminded him of better times. Do not worry, Emilia-sama. I won't tell him about it, but I want you to know this. No matter what you tell Naruto, he loves you from the bottom of his heart. He understands your feelings, and will do anything to make you smile. He said with a soft smile on his face, he was speaking from experience, if a man loves a woman, then there was nothing in the world that would get in his way. Thank you, Wilhelm. Emilia said before she sprinted towards Naruto, all the while the old swordsman smiled with nostalgia, missing the days of youth he once had. I was bored because no one came, nor would they come close. But, they went to call you, my dear. Thank you, I'm sorry? Thanks to everyone, it seems like we can have a happy reunion. Even though it seems like there are some nuisances as well. Sirius called out in greeting, her body still had tied up with the curse marks. It seemed like Sirius was mistaking Naruto as a body that was possessed by Betelgeuse again. Of course, it was just what she wanted to believe, but it seemed like he would need to play her little game if he wanted the information she possessed. There were so many questions he needed to ask Sirius, the majority having to do with the witch cult and even her own identity. You're still tied up and your authority is sealed away, you can do nothing. But that isn't you. Whatever doesn't come from you, no matter what it is, ultimately makes no sense to me. Sirius apologized, looking him in the eyes with a crazed affection. It made his senses shiver in disgust since he could feel what her emotion was. Naruto, it's pointless. It's meaningless to expect human emotion like introspection or empathy from such people, I suppose. These guys are nothing but malevolent, in fact. Beatrice said. She was beside him because she didn't want to leave his side, he supposed that her seeing him in such a sorry state made her feel protective of him. Spirit in the form of a girl, don't you get closer to my precious Betelgeuse. Sirius bluntly began to take a sullen attitude when Beatrice pulled Naruto's sleeve. Beatrice snorted her small nose at the words of that monster and tugged his arm even closer to her. His name isn't Betelgeuse. Beatrice said while glaring at her. Don't get carried away, you bitch. That person's side is the place which I snuggle up to in heart and flesh. Don't you dare point out your mistaken, arbitrary devotion to that person. I'll set your backside on fire, burn the inside of your belly to cinders, and turn you into fertilizer for the OD Lagna. Beatrice, step back. Perhaps she'll just talk with me. Naruto said. But. Beatrice tried to say something, but Naruto interrupted her again. Please. This is an important chance to speak with a member of the witch cult. We're lucky enough that the guards are letting us speak to her in the first place. If she thinks I'm Betelgeuse, I'll have to tag along with that. He said through their link as he turned around to give her a head pat. She looked down in disappointment but understood the situation, so she squeezed his hand the last time and took a seat at the other side of the room. Then, Naruto, who'd been entrusted with this situation, turned to face the bound monster once again. The room was dead silent. The shinobi sat down on the chair and looked at Sirius. Now, it's you and me here. You two have your standpoint. I understand that. It's fine. These chains won't come loose or break. The captive Sirius was delighted with Naruto's attitude. She was giddy, he was even talking to her. It didn't imply that Beatrice's figure was out of sight, but it seemed like she'd completely expelled her from her notice. So, what should we talk about? Because of your relationship with me, there's hardly anything to say between us. We can just exchange love, don't you think? Just kidding. Sirius took that joyful attitude again. Naruto frowned at her face and attitude. What is your purpose? Why did all of you Sin archbishops attack the city at the same time? Are you here for the half-elf to resurrect the Witch of Envy? He didn't call Amelia by her name just in case they were unaware of it, but knowing them they probably were. While he had already defeated the Witch of Envy once, he couldn't help but be anxious about them putting their hands around Amelia. Please don't misunderstand, darling. Why do you keep calling me darling? Naruto asked. He decided to humor her since she was insane like that. You're the only one I love. The only one. I don't care about the witch. Everything is just a necessary thing to get to you. She said as she looked into Naruto's eyes with her glittering eyes. On her face, which was wrapped in bandages, she twisted her lips to bare her yellowed teeth. The other Sin archbishops are similar. All of them have worthless, insignificant, repulsive desires, and merely cling to their authorities. For me, my only reason is love, and for my beloved dear, it's different. It's different in every way. If you don't remember why I joined, you're it. Naruto raised an eyebrow. It seemed like Sirius had some interesting info. Much like the Akatsuki, their members appeared to be dysfunctional to the point where they didn't seem to care about the others. He had already figured that much since Regulus never lifted a finger to help the now deceased Lei when they fought. So, it was obvious to assume that they had someone controlling things in the shadows, someone powerful enough to keep all of them behaved and under one banner. Not to mention the fact that this someone could be the reason they were archbishops in the first place. Betelgeuse was another man before becoming a psychotic and twisted being. He even had a loved one, Fortuna. So it made no sense for him to just go bonkers out of nowhere. Thinking about Amelia's aunt made him refocus on the woman before him. Her silver hair, her purple eyes, and the fact that her ears were covered were all very suspicious when he looked at who those same features belonged to. It made him wonder if she was corrupted too. Sirius, who are you? Where did you come from? Well, my hometown was destroyed by a witch hunt. My name is Sirius. What's with the bandages covering your entire body and face? Were you injured during this witch hunt? When she just nodded, he took a deep breath and asked the dreaded question. He wanted this done with. There was no point in making this harder than it already was. May I remove your bandages? Sirius nodded without hesitation while smiling at her love. And began to fiddle with her chains when he stood up and moved toward her, his towering presence filling her with excitement. When he stood in front of her, he took one of his few remaining kunai and gently began to cut the bandages till her face was in perfect view of everyone in the room. Her face was scarred beyond repair, she had dark circles around her eyes, but her most important feature were her two pointed ears. He continued to look at her in pity. He couldn't look at her and tell if she was Fortuna or not. It seemed like time had taken its toll on her body, but since the rest of the elves were frozen, the chances that she was another elf were very slim. You're different. You've changed. You're definitely different from that person whom I love. Even if you're the same, you're different. Sirius said, showing more genuine emotion now that her face was exposed. Betelgeuse is inside you. Soul and soul will melt together, flesh and flesh will become one, and like that, that beloved person will surface, though it will take some time. What I ought to do is help that. To see that person waking up, by your side. Sirius twisted her neck and looked up at Naruto. An endless swirling storm of emotions surged up in her crazed eyes. Anger, joy, sorrow, and a longing that she couldn't conceal, all continued to swirl in Sirius's eyes. I'll drag that person out from inside of you. Please, until that day comes, take care of your mind and body. The Betelgeuse you know is dead, freed from his suffering. Did you even know that he loved someone apart from Sadella? Naruto said, trying to stir her memories. Her name is Fortuna. Have you heard that name before? Sirius tilted her head up to look at him. Nope. She answered while shaking her head while Naruto walked toward Beatrice to get them out of there. One last thing, I'm going to give you some advice so that you don't end up doing something unnecessary. Advice? He asked. He didn't plan on leaving, but since she was dancing around his questions he had to give the I'm leaving strategy a shot. A lot of people wanted to wait until the end of a conversation to have the last word. Yes, so that I don't lose my beloved darling. Since you killed Gourmet, be careful around bizarre eating and satiation. They will eventually try to snatch you away. If that happens before he wakes up, no one will end up being able to remember my darling. She said, true worry in her voice. Oh. I almost forgot. You should avoid the Witch of Vainglory, Pandora. She's interested in you, but I don't want her to take you away from me. I feel jealous, she's been looking at you way too much. The Witch of Vainglory, Pandora? He opened his eyes when she told him of yet another sin he had to worry about. As far as he was aware the archbishops were all known, but it seemed like others just kept popping up. Could she be the one in charge? She didn't show her face when the attack began and even Regulus was involved in the whole debacle, so she was at least very important in the organization. What did Pandora want with him? Did she know that he killed the majority of the archbishops and took their witch factor? That worried him. She could want them back and use one of his loved ones as a bargaining chip. Naruto looked at Sirius for a minute and then left her in the prison. He left the room with Beatrice, all the while he was thinking about how he would tell the bad news to Emilia, or if he even wanted to. After leaving Sirius in prison, Naruto walked back to the shelter where Ferris and everyone was at. Naruto, are you okay? Emilia asked while looking at the downed expression on his face. They had shared a lot of time, so just looking at him was enough for her to know that he was a little down. It worried her that he was keeping things to himself and that he wouldn't be able to deal with a lot of things. She loved this man, but he would be the first to protect someone, even if it meant hurting himself. She wanted to trust her with whatever was bothering him. So she took his hand and they left the town hall, sitting in the desolate park outside the said building. Emilia, what's up? Did something happen after you talked with Raph? She asked. Of course, she knew he'd gone to the prison to talk with her. He told her, Garfield, and Ram that he had some things to ask her, but none of them seemed personal enough to put him into a sour mood. He just kept looking at the sky in wonder. Should he tell her about her, possibly, aunt? Keeping it from her seemed like a really selfish thing to do, but on the other hand, he didn't know how she would react to the news that her only living relative was a psychopathic murderer. I'd love to tell you, but it's just... He knew the second the words left his mouth that there was no turning back. Her eyes lit up with concern and she made that pouty face she bore when she was between mad and curious. He couldn't keep it from her, and lying wasn't an option, not with their relationship. Emilia, listen to me very carefully. Sirius is an elf. Emilia's eyes widened when he said elf. That's impossible. I froze my entire race, how? She asked. The last time they saw an elf was in the sanctuary, and even then it wasn't much of a shock. They were trapped there with a barrier and elves had long lifespans. It wasn't much of a stretch to think she'd been there for a long time. She said that her hometown was destroyed during a witch hunt. He continued. I unwrapped her bandages and she was, well, very similar to you. Now there's no telling if she's Aunt Fortuna. Emilia guessed, her hands going to the sides of her head. Something was trying to go out as if she knew something she couldn't remember. But she died. I saw her. She started to hyperventilate. She didn't know what came to her. It was as if something had cracked in her head, and it hurt a lot. Naruto reacted quickly by approaching her, grabbing both her arms and pulling her into a hug before she could have a panic attack. Emilia, calm down. I wasn't saying that she's her. He tried to defuse the situation with an excuse for Emilia to grab onto. She needed to make sense of the situation, so the possibility of her being a totally different elf would calm her down. They were there for a few minutes, her shaking subsided slowly but surely, and she composed herself. Luckily, they were alone, so she had no one to worry about. I'm okay. I'm sorry. Amelia said, her blurry with tears that she completely ignored in favor of massaging her temples. It's okay. Naruto said while cleaning her tears with his thumb. I'm not 100% sure that was her, but then again, I have no way of knowing. Her face was burned beyond recognition, but she still had a lot of your attributes. He bit his lip when he remembered what the prison commander told him when he left her cell. If he was going to do this, then he might as well do it right. There will be a discussion in a few hours about whether or not they'll execute her. Normally, he'd be all against the mere idea of execution, but seeing as the great majority of the members of the cult were all murderers themselves, he couldn't, in good faith, go and defend their actions. He himself had to cut down multiple of them when they tried to kill his loved ones or innocents. Hell, he even killed Betelgeuse, who had a very similar sad backstory but couldn't be kept living due to his shattered mind and warped ideals. Okay, but how can we be sure if she's who you think? She asked, unsure about what to believe. That's what I want to know. She said that her hometown was destroyed by a witch hunt. I couldn't feel any sort of deception in her words, she was definitely saying the truth, plus with her injuries. I don't know what to think. Amelia said as she held Naruto's hands. She felt nervous about finding out if Wrath is just an elf or Fortuna. I'm scared to find out if she's my aunt or just an elf. I'm here for you. We will find out. Naruto said. He hoped Amelia would make her mind soon. He needed to know whether or not to prepare to fight the whole kingdom of Lugnica if she decided they were going to break her out. He was her knight after all. He wouldn't kill anyone that was just doing their job, but he was going to knock them unconscious if they tried to kill Amelia. He was getting ahead of himself. Right. Thank you. She said as she smiled and gave him a tender kiss before pulling away. Let's go, the other candidates and the authorities of the city need to be debriefed on the whole thing. She stood up and took his arm. She was first and foremost one of the candidates to rule the whole kingdom. She couldn't let personal things distract her from her goal. Then, Naruto and Amelia headed toward the hotel where the meeting was going to take place since the town hall was ruined. It didn't take long for Naruto to find Julius watching the hotel from the outside. The shinobi told Amelia to go ahead. He approached the man and waved to get his attention. Naruto. You have returned and Amelia-sama is safe. Julius said while looking at Amelia, who waved her hand at him while entering the hotel. He quickly remembered his last interaction with his fellow knight and sighed in shame. I take it that you wanted to know about gluttony. Sadly, we didn't find him. Really? Even though he was injured, you couldn't find him? He knew what Julius was capable of and the man was stronger than gluttony. The only way for the archbishop to win a fight between the two was to fight dirty, so it surprised him that he could sneak out. My quasi-spirits were on the search for him, but they didn't find him. It was strange. His mana is gone. He just suddenly vanished. Julius did something wrong, Naruto asked before he heard Beatrice and Rem's voice as he turned around to see them approaching. Oh, you two came. He was surprised they both came, seeing as the last meeting between the candidates was ridiculously boring. Beatrice herself fell asleep on his lap. Since she was his spirit she could come into the room, and Rem had to wait outside, so it was a wonder why she came. I was wondering what was taking you two so long. You know the conference is about to begin. Rem reminded the two. Julius, it's good that you're here. Anastasia was looking for you, she needs you to enter with her to the auditorium. Thank you. I'll be there right now. Naruto, it was good to see you. I see you in the conference room. Julius said before he entered the hotel. How was the conference, Naruto-kun? Rem asked the shinobi, who came out from the conference room with Amelia and a sleeping Beatrice in his arms. He honestly looked miserable. That went longer than I expected. Is this what the Hokage does every day? His tired mind was beginning to have an existential crisis. Well, the 5 candidates and their knights were present in the conference room: Amelia, Felt, Priscilla, Anastasia, and Crush. Crush, due to her particular situation, had to be filled in on everything she missed since her mind was wiped, so naturally, the meeting was much longer than expected. They talked about if they should put Sirius in a prison or execute her. The whole thing turned into a mess since the candidates were obviously looking out for their interests and that of the kingdom. Emilia and felt voted for putting Sirius in prison. They argued that since her authority could transfer once its current owner died, the best would be to keep her alive. There was no telling whether her abilities would remain or wrath would change for the worst with an even more bloodthirsty wielder. Not only that, her magic could become a beneficial asset in the long run if properly studied. However, Anastasia and Priscilla were very adamant about putting the monster out of her suffering since her crimes couldn't be ignored by tossing her into a cell and robbing the families of her victims of the satisfaction of seeing her blood run on the blade of the guillotine. If they did kill her, presenting her head as a symbol of power to the kingdom against the witch cult would bring hope to people's hearts after years of the cult being what amounted to the boogeyman to the general public. Since they tied, the last vote was Crush's, and since she was in no condition to make any meaningful decision, she called for a recess to talk with each side and determined at the end that the benefit of a sin being at their side couldn't be ignored in the long run, both in a scientific perspective and as a powerful weapon against the enemies of Lutnica if properly studied. However, if she managed to escape, there would be no mercy and she would be killed on sight. So, as long as Sirius stayed put, she could live, but if she became more trouble than she was worth, they would kill her on the spot. After the whole thing was done, for each of them took a brief recess and less important matters were talked about, such as the number of victims on both sides, and the authorities of the city were brought in as well as other high-profile people who briefed them on the costs of reparations on the infrastructure and the population. Emilia and Crush both received generous rewards since Naruto and Crush killed archbishops in their lands. Naruto didn't receive it because Emilia was his lady and she was in charge of the finances, and Rem was a maid, so naturally, the reward went to one of the candidates. In the end, the general agreement would still be to hunt down the witch cult if they entered in contact and report it to the rest of the candidates, and with that, they bid each other farewell. Well, they decided to put Sirius in prison. She has information about the witch cult they may want. More importantly, there are 2 or 3 more Sin archbishops if I'm correct. Naruto said as he looked at Emilia, who was very silent. Emilia? Do you think I'm doing the right thing? Emilia asked, gripping her boyfriend's hand. She was a little shook from her possible aunt and the fact that she couldn't do a thing but wait for Crush to decide on whether she lived or died. The whole thing took a toll on her mind. Naruto stared at her for a few seconds before he turned around. To tell you the truth, I can't answer your question. But, you must believe in yourself. As a candidate you have to take confidence in your ability to rule. He smiled as he patted her head. You're right, I made the right call with what info I had, I just know it. Frederica will see me in my room, I need to change my clothes. I'll take Beatrice with me to get her on her bed. She said as she took the girl from his arms and walked away after pecking his lips. Shortly after she left, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Naruto. Can I talk with you? Rem asked. She wasn't looking at his eyes, so she definitely had something on her mind. Sure. After Naruto accepted Rem's request, they went to their living room where they could talk in private. Rem, is there something you want to talk about? Naruto asked. Rem was silent for a few seconds, thinking about Naruto's recent attitude. He seemed fine, but there was something off. She wondered if this whole thing was taking a toll on his mind. Let's talk, okay? I have some things I want to ask you. Yeah, what is it? He asked, wondering what she wanted to ask him. Beatrice told me you had separated limbs, but somehow, they reattached, with little to no help. I know Kurama doesn't have that kind of healing power. I just wanted to know if you're okay. I'm okay. It's just my Rikudo Sennin chakra. I had to use it to reattach my limbs, I was in a hurry. He hated lying to her when she was clearly just looking out for him, but there were some things that no even he had an answer for. You screamed when you woke up after almost dying of blood loss. You immediately killed that other archbishop. That's not normal. She was clearly trying to get to the bottom of whatever she was worried about. Naruto glanced down and thought, if she wanted to know about that situation, then maybe he could just tell her the minimum. Yes. I did something to my body. I paid the price to reattach my limbs so I could go save Emilia. But, I can't give you more details about this. He said truthfully, he really didn't know what was going on himself. He couldn't tell Rem a bunch of convoluted theories that may as well be untrue. Then, that explains why you have tattoos on your back. Rem said as she widened her eyes. What did you have to sacrifice? Rem could spot some differences in his body since the last time they talked. His tanned skin had gone a little pale, His whiskers weren't as prominent as before, his previously blonde hair had dimmed in intensity and had some streaks of white, he had tattoos on his back and his deep blue eyes had grown an even deeper shade of blue. I'm afraid it's true, Remington. But, it was just a small price. I didn't want you or Emilia to get worried about me. Naruto was interrupted by Rem as she pushed him against the wall. Rem? He saw her hands clinging to his shirt as she shook her head from side to side. You're a liar. 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 You continue to hurt yourself. Rem yelled through her tears as she buried her face in his chest. I don't want to lose you like the time I almost thought you were gone. I'm scared. Did you really forget that we care about you? Naruto. I beg of you. Please take good care of yourself. For me. For Emilia. I don't want you to turn into a demon and lose control just like me. Rem. Naruto said softly. He wrapped his arms around her body and pulled her into a hug to comfort her. Remington. He repeated as the blue-haired maid looked at him. Yes. I'm sorry for being stupid and stubborn. He said as he started to clean her tears with his hand. I understand how this makes you feel, but there are things that I just can't promise. I will try to take care of myself, but I need you to understand that I do this, because it's just who I am. Fine, I'm sorry for pushing you and yelling at you. Rem apologized, but Naruto shook his head. There's no need, I like to hear how you feel, you're important to me. He smiled at her, letting her know that he was fine. She let go of him and walked toward the window to refresh herself and dry her tears. Then, I'll take your word for it. She laughed at her stupidity, she really just exploded like that, there was nothing wrong, sure he was a little different than before, but was it really such a bad thing? Naruto still looked at her with those warm eyes of his and his smile seemed as genuine as ever. Now that she looked at his physique she had to take care of something. Naruto, we need to take care of that hair of yours. She began to play with his hair, now that the mood was much more light she decided to change subjects, she had nothing to worry about now. Why? Is it so bad? He tried to escape from Rem, but she decided to keep him in place. Naruto, Beatrice is asleep. We can. Oh. Rem, what are you doing here? Emilia entered the room without a sound only to be surprised to see Rem with a pair of scissors trying to sneak up on Naruto. Emilia-sama, help. Tell Naruto that his hair needs to be cut. Rem said. Here, let me help you. She giggled as she and Rem trapped the blonde. Girls. Stop. Naruto begged them to stop. His hair was okay, he didn't feel like having his hair cut down. See? Even Emilia-sama thinks your hair is too long. Rem said. I think Rem is right about your hair. You should let her cut it. Emilia said with a smile. Now that Naruto looked at her she had changed into a beautiful combo of a white sundress and a light purple sweater. As the two girls played around with Naruto's hair, the door was opened by a blonde woman in a maid uniform. Frederica? Emilia said surprised. Did I interrupt your fun? She asked with a smug look on her face as the three of them blushed. What is it? Naruto asked. Anastasia-sama wishes to see you. Frederica said. Naruto widened his eyes slightly in surprise. Alright. I'll be there right now. He said, standing up on his feet, but a slender hand grabbed him before he could go out. Naruto looked at Emilia, who had a worried face. I don't know what she wants from you, but be careful. Emilia said. It was no secret her dislike for her fellow candidate. I'll be fine. Trust me. He smiled as Emilia smiled back at him. The silver-haired girl leaned in forward to kiss him on his cheek. I understand. She said. Naruto entered the conference room they held their meeting in a while back. It was deserted besides Anastasia herself. Thank you for coming here. I'm happy you accepted my invitation. Anastasia spoke, sitting on the chair, before she made a gesture with her hand to point at the other chair. Please sit. What do you want with me? Anastasia stroked her hair while looking at Naruto. Well, I always wanted to talk with you. Just you and me alone. I heard that you killed the Archbishop of Greed, who killed thousands of soldiers. Congratulations on your victory. She said, her tone making it obvious that that wasn't all. Let's get straight to the point. You wanted me here. Here I am. What exactly do you want with me? My, Anna, it seems like he wants to talk with me. The voice of a third person suddenly echoed in Naruto's ears. This voice belonged to neither Naruto nor Anastasia. Instead, it felt lighter and more neutral. Naruto nodded as he looked at Anastasia. I knew you weren't by yourself. I'm quite talented at feeling others' presence. Who are you? He asked, noticing the voice coming from Anastasia's neck. Around Anastasia's neck, her scarf of what appeared to be faux fox fur beamed, getting off of her shoulders. Well done. I'm Echidna. Well, I say that, but what I really am is an artificial spirit. She said. Wait, what? He blinked in confusion at the white fox while pointing out his finger. So, are you fake Echidna, or do you just turn into a fox? Wait a moment, stop jumping to conclusions, and listen. Anastasia said. I don't know what you're going on about, but it's been about a decade since I first met Echidna, and since then, we've barely ever been separated. Isn't that just a little mismatched with your story? Oh. Naruto understood while nodding his head as he moved toward Echidna and touched her soft cheek. Your voice does sound like the Echidna I met. If your name is Echidna, does this mean you were created by her? I don't know anything about any Echidna outside of myself, since I was born knowing nothing except my name, Echidna, and my race, artificial spirit. Those are my only clues to my origin. Echidna said. Hold up. You don't remember where you come from? Naruto asked. Well, it wouldn't be the first time she abandons one of her creations. That's unfortunate. Even though you said I was created by Echidna, I still can't remember it. She said. Since you know Echidna, perhaps I could pay a visit to and meet Echidna. You want to see Echidna? But, how do I know that I can trust you? He asked. While Echidna was a witch and a very bad mother, he couldn't just guide one of the candidates to a witch and expect everything to go swell, not to mention that wherever Anastasia was so was Julius, a knight sworn to obey her. I already showed you what I am. You said that I was created by Echidna. Maybe there was a reason why she created me and chose my name as Echidna's name. The nature of the existence of artificial spirits was unclear to Naruto, but he did know that Beatrice and Puck were both made by the witch Echidna. Of course, if the white fox were truly an artificial spirit, then she must also have come from Echidna's hands. Go ahead. You can trust her. Kurama interrupted Naruto's thoughts as he looked at him. Are you sure? Naruto asked, not too sure. I'm sure. She has no ill intent, and Echidna is her creator, so it's just fair for them to see each other. Kurama said. Naruto nodded as he looked at Anastasia and the white fox. Alright. I'll let you see her, but you can tell no one about her or else. He said, his eyes narrow. If they discovered Echidna, then they would discover the other witches of sin. He wouldn't allow harm to come to them. I know that. I know that. Anastasia, and I already decided not to tell anyone. Echidna said. But, Julius will have to come with me. You know him well. Right. Naruto nodded. If I let you see Echidna, what would you do? You should know what I'm about to ask her. You have the same question as me. I want to know why she created me. See? Both of us have the same question. Naruto looked at Anastasia. Are you sure you can trust her? He asked. He didn't like the situation. The only reason he was even humoring the situation was that they knew of his relationship with Echidna. Seemed like they had very good intel, that or they heard her yell her name when they were having coffee. I like her. She's been by my side for more than 10 years. She's more like a guardian or family. She wants me to be well, and more than anything, to be happy. She said so it was natural for her to be well too. That's very sweet of you. Echidna said. Anyways, you can go now. Naruto stood up from his chair and walked towards the door, but before grabbing the knob, she said something that almost made him attack her without a second thought. It's nice to meet Shinobi, who comes from a different world. He glanced back to Echidna, but he wasn't surprised and left the room. They could do nothing with that information. She should count her lucky stars that he wasn't a normal shinobi. If he was, that admission would make him capture them and torture them for information on their sources. What do you think of him? He's interesting. Anastasia said. Very interesting. He comes from a different world. Maybe there's a reason why he's here. Make no mistake. He's very powerful. Echidna said. I wonder why. Naruto, why did you break your promise? You will hurt yourself. You will lose your humanity. Naruto. On hearing his name being called out, Naruto looked up in surprise. Emilia, Rem, and Beatrice stood in front of him. He was thinking about what had been going on recently. You said that you went to see Anastasia. You said that, but since you weren't coming back, I ended up getting worried. What have you been doing? Emilia asked. Nothing much, really. Naruto said as he stood up from the bench and looked at the three who stood in front of him. I'm sorry for making you girls worry about me. I'm fine. It's alright. I was wondering where you were. Emilia said. Since you're done, what are you going to do now? There are some places I haven't explored. You girls want to come with me? He asked as Emilia nodded with a smile and she held his hand. The rest decided to go out of boredom, they had nothing else to do. Beatrice kept looking behind Naruto, towards the bridge behind him. Just as if she had an inkling about the conversation that he'd had there. Naruto, if you're going to do something dangerous, you should call Betty Kashira. If I were to leave you alone and it got dangerous, Betty would be beside herself no yo. I'm fine on my own, Beatrice. There's no need to worry, I won't do anything stupid. Beatrice is really worried that you're going to replace her. Rem smiled as Beatrice's face turned red and looked at her with a growl. Really? I assume it was Mimi who gave you that idea. He said laughing silently while Emilia swatted his arm for playing with her. Yes, you are correct. Right, Beatrice? Why you're wrong. I didn't say that. I'm not jealous. Beatrice yelled, her eyes spinning. Ah. Getting rather angry, Beatrice approached to slap him over and over again. As she did, Naruto hoisted Beatrice up into his arms, who let out a surprised fwa, and walked towards where Emilia and Rem were. Re-release me, put me down Kashira. Ah, but, put me down without scooting off no yo. Beatrice yelled, waving her arms around. No way. You deserve a reward for saving my life. Naruto said with a smile, it was clear to him that Beatrice, much like a cat, was asking for his attention. Hya no yo. I'll let go of me Kashira. Put me down no yo. Slowly and gently, like you were admiring a flower Kashira. She yelled while kicking up a fuss over Naruto's shoulder. Come on, Beatrice. You know you need a reward for saving his life. Emilia giggled softly at them, it was a really sweet moment and since they had been very busy lately she needed Naruto to pay more attention to her. Emilia-sama is right. Without your help, Naruto would have been dead and Emilia would have been gone. Rem said with a smile as she looked at Naruto. Where are we heading to? I don't know. Anywhere. Naruto said, with a sweat drop. The city was very pretty, he was surprised the girls didn't drag him to explore it with them. Beatrice kept shaking her body to get off of him, without ever going down, despite him not holding her at all. And Naruto. Put me down Kashira. I don't want to be carried she, without meaning to, touched his forehead and she saw a demonic red eye that made her heart skip a beat. However, that was quickly replaced by his smiling face, making her forget what she just saw. Your smile won't make me do it. Beatrice said, crossing her arms while being carried by Naruto. What was that all about? If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kayashin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips. Yami Tancho. Harold's Martinsons. If you like this content, don't forget. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here until next time.